rancher finds a Lakota warrior dying by his creek. Dawn brings 200 horsemen. The rancher woke before sunrise, as he always did. The land taught him that daylight was something you earned, not something you waited for. He pulled on his boots, still damp from yesterday's work, and stepped outside into the cool morning air. The sky was pale and quiet, the kind of quiet that made every sound feel louder than it should be. The creek ran along the eastern edge of his property. After last night's storm, he wanted to make sure nothing had washed out. No broken fences, no stranded cattle, no fallen trees blocking the water. He saddled his horse and rode out slowly, letting the animal pick its way along the muddy ground. Mist hovered low over the creek. The water moved faster than usual, dark and restless from the rain. As the rancher followed the bank, he noticed something out of place. At first he thought it was driftwood caught near the reed. Then the shape shifted slightly. He stopped his horse. There was a man lying near the water's edge. The rancher dismounted carefully, one hand resting near his side, not on a weapon, but out of habit. He had lived long enough on this land to know that surprises were rarely harmless. As he stepped closer, he saw the man was alive, but just barely. The man's clothes were torn and soaked with blood in creek water. His breathing was shallow, uneven. Long black hair clung to his face, and his skin was pale beneath streaks of dirt and dried blood. A broken arrow shaft lay nearby, snapped clean as if someone had tried to pull it free in a hurry. The rancher knew immediately this was no ordinary traveler. The markings on the man's clothing, the way his hair was braided, the symbols stitched into worn leather, all pointed to one thing. The man was Lakota, and not just any man, but a warrior. The rancher felt his chest tighten. Helping this man could bring trouble. Big trouble. Tensions in the region were never simple. People disappeared over smaller misunderstandings. And a wounded warrior did not end up alone by accident. Someone had been chasing him. Someone might still be close. The rancher stood there for a long moment, listening. The land was quiet. No voices. No horses. Only the sound of the creek and the distant call of a bird waking up to morning. He knelt beside the injured man. The wounds were bad. One deep cut along the side, another across the shoulder. The arrow wound looked older, maybe from the day before. Whoever this man was, he had been hurt, kept moving, and finally collapsed here when his body could no longer go on. The rancher had seen men die before. He knew the look of someone who would not last long without help. He also knew the safest choice would be to walk away. No one would blame him. No one would even know. But as he looked at the man's face, he saw something that stopped him. Even in pain, even half-conscious, the warrior's expression was calm, not begging, not afraid. Just tired, like someone who had already accepted whatever came next. The rancher exhaled slowly. He could not leave him. With effort, he dragged the man farther from the creek, away from the open bank. The warrior groaned softly but did not wake. The rancher checked the surroundings again, then made a decision that would change everything. He brought the man onto his horse. The ride back to the ranch was slow and careful. The injured man slipped in and out of awareness, murmuring words the rancher did not understand. The rancher spoke anyway, steady and low, more for himself than for the man. Talking helped keep panic away. At the ranch, he took the man to an old storage shed set back from the main cabin. It was hidden from the road, shaded by trees, and rarely used. If anyone passed by, they would not see what was inside. He laid the man down on a clean tarp and got to work. The rancher was no doctor, but years on the frontier had taught him enough. He cleaned the wounds as best he could, using water boiled over a small fire. He wrapped cloth tightly, pressing until the bleeding slowed. The arrow wound worried him most. It was deep and angry-looking, but the shaft was gone. And that was something. As the hours passed, the man stirred. His eyes opened briefly, dark and sharp despite the pain. They locked onto the rancher's face, alert in a way that made it clear this was no helpless stranger. The rancher raised his hand slightly, slow and calm. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, keeping his voice steady. "You're safe. For now." The warrior stared at him for a long moment. Then his eyes drifted shut again. Later, as the light outside faded, the man woke once more. This time he spoke, his voice rough but firm. He said only a few words in broken English. "They will come." The rancher did not pretend not to understand. "Who?" he asked. The warrior did not answer directly. He only turned his head slightly toward the east, where the land stretched wide and open. His jaw tightened. "They do not stop," he said. The rancher nodded. Night settled in slowly, heavy and watchful. The rancher stayed in the shed, sitting near the door, listening to every sound. Each creak of wood, each rustle of wind through the trees made his heart jump. He thought about what he had done. By helping this man, he had stepped into something much bigger than himself. He did not know if those who were coming would see mercy as kindness or as interference. The warrior slept fitfully, his breathing still weak but steadier than before. Once he reached out, gripping the edge of the blanket with surprising strength. The rancher adjusted the covering and spoke quietly, telling him to rest. Hours passed. The rancher did not sleep. Just before dawn, the world went very still, the kind of stillness that felt like a held breath. The rancher stood and stepped outside the shed, scanning the horizon. At first he heard nothing. Then far away, barely more than a vibration in the ground, came a sound he knew well. Hooves. Not one horse. Many. The sound faded as quickly as it came, leaving the rancher standing in the cold early light, unsure if his ears had tricked him. He waited several long seconds, listening again. Nothing. Only the wind moving through the grass and the soft call of morning birds. He went back inside the shed. The Lakota warrior was awake. His eyes were open now, focused, watching every movement. Pain still showed on his face, but his mind was clear. He tried to sit up and failed, letting out a quiet breath through clenched teeth. "Don't," the rancher said gently. "You'll only make it worse." The warrior studied him for a moment, then slowly relaxed back against the support beneath him. His breathing steadied. When he spoke again, his words were careful, as if each one cost effort. "You did not leave me." The rancher shook his head. Didn't feel right to do that. A faint expression crossed the warrior's face. Not quite a smile, not quite surprise. Something like respect. "You risk much," the man said. "Because of me." The rancher did not deny it. "I figured that part out." The warrior closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. "Those who hunt me, they will not harm you if they understand." "If they understand what?" the rancher asked. "That you helped," the warrior replied. "Not for reward, not for sides." The rancher exhaled. "That's a big if." Silence settled between them. The warrior shifted slightly, then stopped, learning his limits. He looked toward the shed door. "Dawn is close," he said. "I know." The rancher brought him water and helped him drink. The warrior moved carefully, every motion controlled. He was weak, but there was strength under that weakness, held back only by injury. As the sky outside brightened, the rancher made a choice. He would not hide anymore. Hiding made things worse. Whatever was coming, it would be better met openly. He stepped outside again. The land stretched quiet and wide. The fence line stood undisturbed. No dust clouds, no shapes on the horizon. Yet the feeling remained, a pressure in the air, like the land itself was waiting. Inside the shed, the warrior spoke again, his voice low but steady. "They are many. How many?" the rancher asked. The warrior paused. "Enough!" The rancher gave a short breath of a laugh, more nerves than humor. "That's what I figured." He checked the wounds again. They were still serious, but the bleeding had slowed. The warrior would live, if nothing else happened. But something else was already happening. As the sun lifted higher, the sound returned. This time, it was real. The ground carried it first. A deep, rolling vibration, steady and organized. Then the air picked it up, the distant rhythm of hooves moving together. The rancher did not reach for a weapon. He left his hands empty and visible. He stepped out into the open space between the shed and the cabin, standing where he could be seen from far away. The sound grew louder. From the ridge to the east, shapes began to form. Dark lines against the pale morning sky. Horses, riders, many of them. They did not rush. They moved with purpose, spread wide but controlled, like they had done this many times before. The rancher counted without meaning to. 20, 50, 100. He stopped counting after that. The Lakota horsemen slowed as they reached the lower ground, fanning out but keeping distance. No one raised a weapon. No one shouted. At the front rode a man whose presence stood out even from far away. He sat tall, calm, his posture confident but not aggressive. When he came closer, he raised one hand. The rider stopped. The leader dismounted and walked forward alone. The rancher stayed where he was. They faced each other in the open space, two men from very different lives, connected now by one quiet decision made beside a creek. The leader spoke first. His English was clear, careful. "You found a man by the water." The rancher nodded. "I did. He was hurt." "Yes." "You helped him." "Yes." The leader studied the rancher's face, searching for something. Fear, lies, anger. He seemed to find none of those. "Why?" the leader asked. The rancher did not give a long answer, because he was dying. The leader held his gaze for several seconds. Then he nodded once, slowly. "Where is he now?" "In the shed," the rancher said. "Alive." A low murmur moved through the distant riders, but no one advanced. The leader raised his hand again, and the sound stopped. "You understand," the leader said, "that this man is important. I figured that out too." The leader's eyes narrowed slightly. Not in threat, but in thought. "You did not ask who he was." "No," the rancher said. Didn't matter. That answer seemed to settle something. The leader turned and spoke quietly to someone behind him. Two riders dismounted and walked toward the shed, slow and respectful. The rancher did not stop them. Inside, the warrior heard the footsteps. He tried again to rise, but his strength failed him. When the two men entered, they stopped short, recognition clear on their faces. They knelt beside him. "Brother," one said softly. The warrior opened his eyes and nodded. "You came, always," the other replied. Outside, the leader waited. The rancher stood beside him, saying nothing, letting the moment unfold. After a short time, the leader turned back to the rancher. "You acted with honor," he said. "You could have walked away." The rancher shrugged slightly. Didn't feel like the right thing. The leader studied the land around them, the creek, the fences, the quiet home. "You placed yourself between what was easy and what was right. That's one way to put it." The leader gave a small nod. "Among my people, that choice matters." The two men from the shed returned. They spoke quietly to the leader in their own language. He listened without interruption. When they finished, he turned back to the rancher. "He will be moved when the sun is higher," the leader said. Carefully, the rancher hesitated. "Will he be all right?" The leader met his eyes. "Because of you, yes." That was more than the rancher had expected. The riders did not leave right away. They remained where they were, calm and watchful, giving space. No threats. No demands. The rancher felt the tension in his chest finally ease just a little. The sun climbed higher, warming the land, but the rancher still felt a chill inside him. The riders remained spread across the field, calm and silent, their horses standing steady as if trained for patience. No one moved without reason. Nothing felt rushed, yet everything felt important. The leader stayed near the rancher. He did not crowd him, did not stand too close, but he also did not turn away. It felt like a quiet test, of trust, of character. Inside the shed, soft voices came and went. The wounded warrior spoke only a little. His strength was still low, but his eyes stayed sharp. He knew where he was. He knew who had come for him. The rancher brought more water and clean cloth. One of the Lakota men helped him this time. Carefully, respectfully, they worked together without many words. No one needed to explain anything. Care was care. That language was shared. When they finished, the warrior rested again. His breathing was steadier now. His hand moved slowly and touched his chest, then lifted slightly toward the rancher. It was not a grand gesture, just a simple sign. The rancher nodded back. Outside, the leader watched the sky for a moment, then turned to the rancher again.
"You live alone on this land?" he asked.
"Yes," the rancher said. "Just me. You are not afraid to be alone." The rancher thought about that. "You get used to it." The leader gave a quiet sound that might have been agreement. "Being alone teaches a man who he is." They stood together, two figures framed by open land, neither trying to claim more space than the other. After a while, more riders dismounted. They moved slowly, checking the ground near the creek, reading signs in the dirt and grass. They did not cross fences without stepping carefully over them. The rancher noticed this. It mattered. He realized something then. These men had not come in anger. They had come with purpose, and that purpose had already been changed by what he had done. The leader spoke again. "My brother was taken by surprise," he said, "not by enemies stronger than him, but by those who broke understanding." The rancher did not ask for details. Some stories did not need to be opened. "He ran to protect something," the leader continued. "He kept moving, even when his body told him to stop." The rancher glanced toward the shed. "He made it here." "Yes," the leader said. "That matters." A young rider approached and spoke quietly to the leader. The leader listened, then nodded. The young man stepped back.
"They say you stayed awake all night," the leader said. The rancher smiled faintly.
Didn't seem right to sleep. The leader looked at him more closely now. Many would have left him by the water. Others would have hidden him and lied. You did neither.
The rancher shrugged. "Didn't plan it, just did what came next."
The leader was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Among my people, actions speak longer than words." The time came to move the wounded warrior. A strong frame made of poles and blankets was brought forward. The riders moved with care, lifting the man gently, keeping his body steady. The warrior did not cry out. His jaw tightened once, but his eyes stayed open, calm. As they carried him out of the shed, the rancher stood nearby. The warrior turned his head slightly. "You stood," he said quietly, "when you could have turned away." The rancher nodded. "Rest now." The warrior's eyes closed as he was carried into the sunlight. The riders placed him carefully on the frame, securing him so the movement would not worsen his injuries. 2 horses were brought forward to carry the weight evenly. The leader gave instructions, short and clear. Everything was done with care, not speed. Before the group began to move, the leader turned to the rancher one last time. "You may hear stories," he said. "Stories change as they travel." The rancher gave a small smile. "That's usually how it goes. What will not change," the leader continued, "is that this land will be remembered." He reached into a small pouch and took out a simple object, a braided cord, worn smooth with time. He held it out. "This is not payment," he said. "It is a sign. If others come, show it." The rancher hesitated, then accepted it.
"I don't expect trouble." The leader's eyes softened slightly.
"Neither do we." With that, he stepped back. The riders mounted. The horses shifted, ready but calm. As they began to move, the sound of hooves rose again, but this time it felt different. Not threatening, not heavy, just present. The group moved east, slowly at first, then steadily. Dust rose behind them, catching the sunlight. Within minutes, they were already becoming shapes against the land, then shadows, then nothing at all. The rancher stood alone again. The silence returned, but it was not the same silence as before. It felt full now, as if something had been settled. He walked back toward the creek. The water still ran dark and fast, carrying away branches and leaves from the storm. He looked at the spot where he had found the warrior lying still and broken. It amazed him how one moment could stretch so far beyond itself. Days passed. The rancher returned to his routine. Fences needed fixing. Animals needed care. The land did not wait for reflection, yet small things changed. Once he found tracks near his property line, horses, but not careless ones. They turned away before crossing. Another time he noticed distant figures on a ridge watching, then disappearing. No one bothered him. Weeks later, a traveler stopped by for water. The man glanced at the land, then at the rancher, and asked no questions. He left quickly, almost too quickly. The rancher understood. He kept the braided cord in his cabin, not as protection, but as reminder. A reminder that even in wide, empty places, choices carried weight. Sometimes at dawn, when the mist rose from the creek just right, he thought of the warrior's eyes opening in the shed. Alert, calm, alive. He never learned the full story. He never needed to. What mattered was this. One morning beside a restless creek, he chose mercy over fear. Life slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but the rancher knew something inside him had changed. The days still began early. The sun still rose over the same hills. The cattle still needed water and care. Yet the land felt different now, as if it carried a quiet memory. He noticed it in small ways. The birds no longer scattered when distant riders appeared on the ridges. The wind felt less sharp in the mornings. Even the creek seemed calmer. Its restless rush softened after the storm had long passed. The rancher did not speak about what happened. Not to travelers. Not to neighbors miles away. Some things were better left unspoken. Words could twist what actions had kept clean. Still, the world had a way of testing silence. One afternoon weeks later, a group of unfamiliar riders appeared near the edge of his land. They were not Lakota. Their horses were tired, their movements careless. The rancher watched from a distance, his posture relaxed but alert. The riders slowed when they reached the fence line. One of them started forward, then stopped suddenly. He leaned down, studying the ground. Another joined him. They spoke quietly among themselves, glancing towards the rancher's cabin. After a moment, they turned their horses away and left without crossing. The rancher did not move until they were gone. That night he sat on his porch, holding the braided cord in his hands. He did not see it as a shield. He saw it as a promise already kept. More time passed. The season shifted. The heat softened. The grass changed color. Work filled his days, but his thoughts sometimes drifted back to the wounded man in the shed. He wondered how the warrior healed, whether he walked easily again, whether the scars stayed. He did not expect answers. One morning, long after the memory should have faded, the rancher woke to hoofbeats again. Fewer this time, slower, familiar in their calm. He stepped outside. 4 riders waited at a respectful distance. At their front was the same leader who had stood with him in the open field weeks before. The man raised a hand in greeting, and the rancher returned it. They dismounted. "We come in peace," the leader said, though his tone made it unnecessary. "I figured," the rancher replied. They walked together toward the porch. No one entered the cabin without invitation. The rancher offered water. The leader accepted. "The man you helped lives," the leader said after a moment. The rancher nodded once. He felt a quiet relief settle in his chest. "He walks again," the leader continued, slowly. "But he walks."
That's good to hear.
"He speaks of you," the leader said. "Not often. But when he does, he speaks with respect."
The rancher shifted slightly.
Praise was not something he sought. The leader looked across the land. "He said something important."
The rancher waited. "He said you did not ask who he was," the leader said.
"Only whether he would live."
"That's true." The leader turned back to him. "That is why there was no judgment that morning."
Only understanding. They stood in silence for a bit, the kind that did not press or demand.
"There are others," the leader said carefully, "who may hear pieces of this story.
Not all will understand it as we do." "I figured that too," the rancher said. "If anyone comes with questions," the leader continued, "they will be told this land is not theirs to disturb." The rancher met his eyes. I didn't help him for protection." "I know," the leader said. "That is why it is given." Before leaving, the leader placed a hand over his chest and bowed his head slightly. The rancher returned the gesture, awkward but sincere. Then they were gone, leaving only quiet behind. After that, no one challenged the rancher's presence. No one tested his fences. No one lingered too long near his creek. It was as if an invisible line had been drawn, not by force, but by shared understanding. Years passed. The rancher grew older. His steps slowed, his hair grayed. But he stayed on the land, tending it with the same steady care. New storms came and went. New paths formed and faded. Sometimes at dawn, he would walk down to the creek. He would stand where the mist rose and think of how close life and death had been that morning long ago. He never thought of himself as brave. He thought of himself as present. That was all it had taken. Being there. Seeing someone in need and choosing not to turn away. The story did not spread far. There were no songs written, no records kept, only a quiet respect that moved through the land like wind through grass. And that was enough. Because some stories are not meant to be told loudly. The years moved forward quietly, the way they often do when nothing demands attention all at once. The rancher grew used to the steady passing of time, marked not by dates but by changes in the land. Grass grew tall and then dry. Winters came and went. The creek swelled in spring and shrank back in summer. He remained on the land through it all. People still passed through the area now and then. Some stayed for a night, some asked questions. Most did not. There was something about the place that made strangers careful, even if they could not explain why. The rancher noticed that. Once a young man stopped by and asked how long the rancher had lived there alone. "Long enough," the rancher answered. The young man nodded as if that explained everything. As time went on, the rancher's body slowed, but his habits stayed the same. He rose early. He checked the creek. He repaired what needed fixing. He listened more than he spoke. One morning, many years after the day by the water, he found fresh flowers laid near the creek bank. They were simple wildflowers, placed carefully, not thrown or dropped. No tracks lingered nearby. He did not remove them. He stood there for a long time, letting the memory return without force. He could still see the wounded man lying there, still feel the weight of the choice he had made. That choice had shaped everything that followed. Later that year, sickness took hold of the rancher, not suddenly, not harshly, but steadily. He felt it in his bones first, then in his breath. He knew the signs. He had seen them before in others. He was not afraid. On his last strong day, he walked the land one final time. He touched the fence posts. He stood by the creek. He sat beneath the old tree near the shed where it had all begun. That evening, as the sun lowered, riders appeared on the ridge. Not many, just a few. They did not rush. They waited. The rancher stepped outside and leaned against the porch rail. He knew who they were before they came closer. The leader was older now, too. Lines marked his face, but his posture remained steady. He dismounted and approached alone, just as he had years before. "We heard," the leader said softly. The rancher nodded. "Figured you might." They sat together on the porch as the light faded. They spoke little. There was no need. Before leaving, the leader placed a small bundle near the door. Inside was the braided cord, returned.
"It was never meant to be kept," the leader said.
Only remembered. The rancher smiled faintly. I remembered. That night the rancher slept deeply. When the sun rose the next morning, the land was quiet. Later, travelers would speak of a ranch that stood empty but untouched. Fences stayed whole. The creek ran clear. No one claimed the land, yet no one disturbed it either. Those who knew understood. The land had been part of a promise once,